We are joined today by Madam Starosьяk, a French teacher and actually my AP teacher who I had for 2 years. She has been teaching at an online school since 2000. And before that, she taught at a brick and mortar school at a homeschooling co-op. She's also a distinguished author. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, Alan. I am thrilled to see you because I've had you in class for 2 years. And my own French studies started with my grandmother, who put me in an immersion French school. And my grandfather had been in World War I, actually fighting in France, learning French at the time. So my whole family was very dedicated to French. My dad was in World War II, although he didn't make it over to France. But then when I started homeschooling my own children, I wanted them to learn French. So I was doing that. And then other homeschooling moms asked me to do a co-op class for them. And then one of those moms asked me to create something online. So it's been 20 years now, and I've taught over 1,000 students. I have roughly 150 students each year.
Oh, that's amazing. It's amazing that you've been doing it for so long and that you've had an impact on so many students' lives. So after starting your career in teaching, why did you decide to enter the online education sphere? What would you say are the advantages and the disadvantages of online learning?
Well, I never decided. As I mentioned, first of all, it didn't exist back in 2000. And as I mentioned, I was teaching for these other homeschool moms, and one of them was in the military, and she said, "We're probably moving, but we want to take you with us." And I said, "Well, how's that going to work?" And she said, "Oh, we know somebody at the Pentagon who's putting together a platform so that we can have an online school for our students." So, I mean, no one had ever heard of this before. It was totally groundbreaking. We like to say that we're not on the cutting edge, we're on the bleeding edge, because there's so many things that go wrong. But I said, "Sure, I'm game." And she said, "So, just keep creating French classes and we'll connect you." So the first year I had about 25 students, and there were maybe 4 teachers: English, history, math, and myself. And then it just kept growing. And of course, the technology got better and better. And our current director, who was the one putting it together for us, he found people to help us. There was one guy in his garage who said, "Sure, I'll create some technology for you. What do you want?" And he would come into my classroom and he'd say, "You okay?" I said, "I'd like to have breakout rooms." And the next morning, he'd have created breakout rooms for us. So he is now an official business on his own, and he sells his platform to businesses and schools. But yeah, in the beginning, it was very pioneering. So it wasn't really a decision. I mean, I have to say that at the time I had finished my master's in Michigan, and I was looking for a post in the public school, but they were all letting their French teachers go in wanting to hire Chinese. So there was no physical position for me. So more and more I invested into this online position, never dreaming that it would become a full-time job, just thinking, well, this is fun, we'll just see what happens with this. So as I mentioned, before we did it, there was asynchronous teaching, which means that as distance learning, students would just go online, find their assignment, write their homework, send it to the teacher. There was no talking. And the advantage was, of course, you could do it anytime. So this was very popular for colleges, not so much for high schools, but it did exist. But, the fact of talking, I mean, that came in a little bit with Skype, but that Skype was still really rough in the beginning for teaching languages, because people would say, "Well, we want to see your mouth." Well, with Skype in the beginning, it didn't really work very well. So it was all asynchronous. And then our school was, I believe, one of the first synchronous schools. So it was real time at a time that worked for me. So if you were in a different time zone, you had to get up early or stay up late. But we became a synchronous school. Now, the advantages are I get to meet really interesting students like yourself. I mean, the diversity is incredible. And I think for especially Americans that live where I do, they love meeting students from around the world. I mean, it's just so fascinating. The other advantages are you can be in your pajamas, you can, meet any time of the day or night, you can travel. I have students who will tell me, "Yeah, I'm in the car right now." and they're
Yeah.
on their phone taking class. I mean, it's really convenient. The disadvantages are distractions. I mean, behind me is my life and my family. Behind my students are their lives and their families. There's a few crazy situations when I've called on a student and they've gotten on the microphone and there was like the Little Mermaid movie playing behind them. And I said, can you turn that off? No, no, my mother wants my 4 little siblings to watch the movie so that I can concentrate on class. It's like, yeah, but we're listening to the Little Mermaid.
Makes
So,
sense.
so there are distractions. And then there's also the solitude. I would say that is definitely my biggest job hazard. And for the students as well, that you just have a sense that nobody sees you, nobody cares, it doesn't matter. For me, there's no direct oversight. Nobody comes into my class and watches and tells me how I could do it better. So all of those are disadvantages, but not enough to stop.
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely enjoyed online education. It's interesting that you've been there from really the beginning and laying the groundwork for this. And now students and teachers, as many of us know around the world, are being forced to move to their education online during this pandemic. What is your advice to those facing this situation? What about their parents? How can they help and be supportive during this time?
Well, although people call it homeschooling, it's not. It's crisis schooling.
Mm,
Families and teachers have been forced into it. It's not anything they would have chosen. I'm on several blogs with other teachers, and all of a sudden, all my colleagues are turning to me, tell us how to do it in 3 days. And I've had 20 years to build my program. Every summer, I can tweak it, I can plan as I want, and this was just forced on people, very unfair. Parents don't know what to do. Plus, they have their own jobs to juggle. Here in the US, we have families that don't have computers, don't have a good Wi-Fi connection. I
for
mean,
sure.
it's just crazy that it's worked at all. And I have some colleagues who are actually doing a very good job. I'm very proud of them, but it's not desirable, and it's sort of like if I had a leak in my basement and I had to go down and do a little plumbing. I mean, it's only temporary. I am not a plumber. I don't plan to be a plumber.
Right.
And so that's what I tell my colleagues who want to go back to their physical schools. It's like, yes, I hope you can. I hope you can next year because this is just temporary. You're trying to make the best of it. Now, to take the pressure off, there's no right way to do it. No
Hmm.
one's ever had to do it before. And like I said, there's no oversight. There's no supervisors coming in and saying, oh, you should have done X or Y. There is no right way to do it. So to any teachers, I would say it takes you back to the basics of I have a concept in my head and I want to get it across. How can I do that?
Mm.
And there's no rules. Whatever works, that's what you should do. It's very pioneering. You learn as you go. So I really suggest that parents and teachers just lower standards, take the pressure off themselves, have mercy on everybody because it's brand new, brand new. The good thing about brand new is there's no one who's done it before you that can turn around and say you're not doing it right.
Makes
You're the
sense.
first, so you get to set the standard. If the class is 15 minutes long or 50 minutes long, I mean, you decide, and there's freedom in that. To really enjoy the freedom and not worry about conforming to a certain standard because there isn't one. For the parents, I would say, again, take the pressure off. Don't worry about your student. I was asking my dad about World War II, and he skipped his senior year because he had to join the Army. He did 3 years of military service, came back, immediately went into college, skipped his first year, and everybody was making accommodations. Everybody was in the same boat. So they were collapsing years of school, saying, well, we're going to count your military service as this many credits of college. And everybody had to do that. So people say that we're in a wartime situation, and therefore colleges are making adjustments. For instance, as you know, with the AP, it has been shortened from 3 hours to 45 minutes, and it's been taken from a written exam to an oral exam. So, and colleges are willing to accept that. They've all weighed in and said, yes, we understand these are emergency times. So I don't think parents or teachers or students should be worried about not covering enough material. First of all, if you get yourself on a schedule each day, you will cover something. I mean, just little by little by little, you'll make progress. That's all that you need to do. And in a physical situation, a teacher might explain a concept and it would take 40 minutes because she has to clarify and answer questions. But you might look at it and say, I got it in 5 minutes. You don't need to sit there for 45 minutes. You can go on to another subject or do something else with your time. So on the other hand, someone else might say, I'm not getting it. I have to do some extra research. So it's very fluid, and the student should do whatever the student needs to do. The parents shouldn't worry about it, and not to give in to fear that, this isn't going to be enough or this isn't going to be good enough, because I believe next year teachers are going to be reviewing a lot. They'll have to, because even if, you, like Alan, are a super student and you're way ahead of everyone else, the rest of the class is not. So the teacher's going to have to slow down and review.
Right. Yeah, it's different for students who are already in this program and are very much used to it, and they're just continuing, and it's going to be a little bit of a shock for those who are just going into that. So you did talk a lot about what parents and teachers can do, but what about students? I know that being at home can be very trying, especially regarding procrastination, staying on task. Do you have any tips for handling this in ways we can really get the most out of this new format?
Well, first, I would tell students to grieve their losses. There's huge losses. There's no sports going on right now. There's no graduation ceremonies, no graduation parties, no prom. There's so many things that students are missing out on, especially the seniors. In fact, a lot of colleges are usually having orientation right now, and that's not happening. So it's a very disappointing time. And I think if students just plow on through, there could be psychological damage later. And also, I just think it will hamper them. So it's important to grieve the losses and say, this is awful. It never happened to anybody else. Hopefully, it'll never happen again. But I'm being cheated out of all the things I was looking forward to in the spring of my senior year. So I think that's really important, to even list it out every day and grieve those losses, because you want to be able to move on. And that is to make a schedule for yourself. We talked about a routine or a plan every day. Be patient with yourself. I mean, there's going to be ups and downs. Some days you'll get up and say, yeah, I'm going to really do it today. And other days I'd rather stay in bed. So there's ups and downs, but you are forced to own your own education. And this is something that doesn't usually happen until students are maybe 21, 22, out of college, because the teachers hold your hand all the way through high school and college. But now, nope, nobody's holding your hand. You're all by yourself, you and your computer. So you've got to own your own education and take responsibility. And so you're being pushed ahead by at least 5 years of maturity. You got to grow up a lot faster and however, there's ways to do this. One, if you know your weaknesses, you can ask a friend for accountability, or a parent or somebody. Just say, hey, make sure I'm out of bed, by 10 in the morning, make sure I've got this work done by noon or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or, check on me. Am I playing too many video games? So you do need accountability. It's tough by yourself. It's very, very hard. And be sure to take breaks. My son, when he was homeschooling, because I homeschooled my kids for 10 years, he would do his work and then he would set the timer, the kitchen timer, and he'd play video games for like 20 minutes. And then the dinner went off and he'd go back to school. So that was his reward. My daughter wanted to talk on the phone with her friends. So she would do an hour's worth of work and then she could have, 10, 15 minutes on the phone. So anyway, work with yourself so that you can get it done. This is also a good time to mention cheating, because online you can cheat so much easier. I mean, my subject matter is French and Google Translate is a click away. It is such a temptation. Plus, young people are used to using their phones for information, like, oh, let's ask Google. But, if you're taking a French test, you're not supposed to ask Google. So The cheating is there, and there's really no way a teacher can stop it online. And this is a real sore point for teachers right now. Um, there is plagiarism software that like history and English teachers can buy, but it's time consuming. The AP exams are going to be monitored with special equipment, so they claim they can tell if you're cheating or not. Another thing that teachers have done is moved all the tests to just oral work. Then there's nothing written, and either you know it and you could talk about it or not. But it kind of boils down to your character. Again, this comes back to growing up really quickly and saying, I'm going to own my education and I'm not going to be a cheater. I'm going to study, I'm going to do my best, I'm going to give my material, my best material to the test, and I'm not going to use outside sources. When you think about it, you know, if you were going for open heart surgery, would you want a surgeon who had cheated? You know, or even one who said, wait a minute, let me check the book here, I'm not sure of this procedure. You know, no, you want the best. You want someone who really knows his material. And that's the kind of person you want to be. You want to be someone with integrity. So it comes down to a personal character issue. Again, no harm in asking for accountability because human nature is frail and we're all right up against our human nature every day.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's definitely important to note that it's not necessarily, even if you're cheating, it might seem a lot easier in the short run, but you're really not helping yourself in the long run because you're not learning the material. And school, in essence, is for you to learn more, and you don't have that opportunity through cheating. So it is personal accountability and really changing your mindset to that. Because you, as you mentioned, you do have to grow up. I remember my first year as an online student was definitely a bit of a transition, but yeah, once you do change the mindset, it's you learn a lot through it. I would say just as much as you would learn in any school. So with that, I think that for many, this can be a unique opportunity for growth. We have access to so many resources and more time that we can take advantage of. With that, are there any resources or any other advice that you would recommend for students or really anyone who wants to learn more or even to explore?
Well, teenagers have a lot of time on their hands, and so I think they probably know more of the websites than I do. I mean, there's a lot of good ones out there, and for French, there's a lot of good ones. I have to kind of chuckle. Lately, I've noticed advertisements on American TV for learning a foreign language. Like Americans are finally have time on their hands. What can I do? Oh, learn foreign language. So, you know, Babel is popular and Duolingo. But whatever you choose, just use it consistently. Just use it consistently. Don't dabble. If you dabble, you're not going to learn anything. But whether it's learning a language or an instrument, whatever it is, you need a routine, you need practice time, and you need to see it through. You can't just try it out and then say, oh, well, you know, not interested. You really need to keep going with it. Then the other thing is to remember that there are three main learning methods for everybody. Some people learn through their eyes, and therefore reading is what's important to them. They're going to learn and remember it as they read it. Others are auditory learners. It's what they hear. So again, if you know you're an auditory learner, you look for websites that have songs and music and, you know, things that you can listen to, and you'll remember it better that way. The third learning method is kinesthetically. So this is a person that has to get their whole body involved. You know, like if it were a language, you would act out the vocabulary or act out the conversation, and you remember better as your body is in movement. So if you know your learning style, then you can look for a website that matches it, and whatever you're learning will come a little bit easier. The other thing is, since you have so much time, make your own. You know, if you say, hey, I figured out a really good way to learn this math equation or this math concept, make your own, and other students will probably follow along. Now with social media, with TikTok and YouTube, there's so many ways in which students can follow you. And if you have a good way of learning, there'll be others who will want your ideas and will follow you.
Yeah, that's interesting, I guess, doing courses from a student perspective as well. Yeah, I do think it's definitely important to learn how you learn and especially take notes because, as you said, you're a lot more independent right now. And it's a very big change. I remember in my school in Canada, I would have blocks of time set up. And so it would be an 8-hour day and I would have blocks for each class. Now with my online school, I have lectures that only last for an hour and a half. So I definitely do think it's important to take notes. So thank you for that. And now looking toward the future. So these unprecedented times, in what way do you think it will change the way we view education, or if any?
Yeah, there's no going back. A lot of the colleges in the US are talking about being online in the fall because now people want to plan. They don't want to have it sprung on them last minute. Some of the high schools are talking about still being online. Nobody knows for sure. So things have definitely changed. I can speak to the teachers, and that is teachers tend to teach the way they were taught. So this totally breaks what they're used to, and it's very uncomfortable to learn a new way and to really be forced into it. I'll also say that face-to-face is always better. You know, like seeing your face right now, this makes my day, you know, because then I can see your reaction. I can see if you're understanding or following. And as you know, with our school, we have turned off the bandwidth to the faces so that we can use it for other things, to take the students to the whiteboard or the book and to have other experiences. But in real life, you can really pick up so much more a person's body language, if they're tense, if they're tapping their foot. I can't see all that, you know, so I do believe that education works best face-to-face, but since we're forced online, I would say that it is a time to learn new things, and that only increases our repertoire and it gives you more options. You know, like, again, speaking of languages, if I wanted to learn Japanese, I could find somebody in Japan to teach me. I mean, how cool is that? So there's just far more options, and I'm sure it's not even begun to dawn on us. And your generation, I mean, you all are the pioneers, and you're the ones that are going to take this to the moon and back, because you'll see all the ways to apply it. You'll see all the ways to make it work for you. And I don't doubt that in 10 years or less, you'll be the head of some company that's offering platforms and websites so that online education can continue. I would say one thing to ask yourself is, what does my future look like? What do I want to learn and why? You know, to really take charge of your own education and your own plans. My job of teaching online did not exist when I was in college. There's no way I could have aspired to it or said, oh, that's what I want to do, sign me up. You know, it developed, and it takes definitely an open mind where you're willing to try something that nobody else has tried. Again, the freedom is you can't be wrong. That's what I love about it, is nobody can tell me I'm doing it wrong, but I will get better. And I do believe it's a collaborative effort between the teachers and the students, because when I first started teaching, I was always asking my students, what works better? Do you like the way I did this test, or would you rather have it in a different form? And I was asking the parents what works best for them, because I didn't know. Nobody knew. You have to ask a lot of questions. And then one year I was looking around for websites for recording tests, and one student said, oh, I can do that on my phone. I'm like, yes, of course you can do that on your phone, you know? So again, it's a collaborative effort between the teachers and the students, and the stars are the limit.
Yeah, for sure. And if I can add, I think it's something I personally learned, especially through your classes and the classes I've taken online, is really the mindset that you're really being taught to teach yourself. So you really have a lot more independence. And it's great also that you mentioned that you're talking with the teachers. So just a quick also follow-up question, how can the teachers get that feedback? And what would you recommend the teachers do to have that communication with the parents, with the students? Or what can they do to really take charge of this opportunity and know what their students want, or just really learn through this format?
Well, again, they were pushed into the deep end and they're paddling hard, just not to drown. So this is probably not even a good time, but when school comes to an end and over the summer, I would definitely reach out to parents that I trust. Like, well, you could send out a poll to everybody, but who knows what answers you would get. But I would probably reach out to some parents that I trust, or some students that seem mature, and say, hey, did this work? Did this game work? did I allow enough time for this assignment? Can you think of a better way to do it? And so I would ask, I mean, you could ask those questions now, but teachers are really overloaded right now. Probably over the summer is the time to ask those questions and to take notes. I do take notes in class. I mean, just thinking, oh, this activity was a bomb. Nobody laughed. You know, it's no fun. Or, oh, this is really good, but we need an extra 10 minutes. So just constantly taking notes on what's working. It's pragmatic. What works?
Okay, for sure. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me today. It was really great to hear the insights, especially from your experience in online school, and just to learn more about it. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. It was fun.